MIT scientists released the results of what they describe as the most comprehensive modeling yet carried out on the likelihood of how much hotter the Earth's climate will get in this century, which shows that without rapid and massive action, the problem will be about twice as severe as previously estimated a couple of years ago. And it could be even worse than that, because their model does not fully incorporate positive feedbacks that can occur. For example, the increased temperature is causing a melting of permafrost in the Arctic regions, which is going to release huge amounts of methane. It's worse than CO2. The leader of the project says there's no way the world can or should take these risks. He says the least cost option to lower the risk is to start now and steadily transform the global energy system over the coming decades to low or zero greenhouse gas emitting technologies. And there's very little sign of that. Well, furthermore, while new technologies are essential, the problems go well beyond that. In fact, they go beyond the current technical debates about just how to work out cap-and-trade devices being discussed in Congress. We have to face something much more far-reaching. We have to face up to the need to reverse the huge state, corporate, and social engineering projects of the post-Second World War period, which very consciously promote. They very consciously promoted an energy-wasting and environmentally destructive fossil fuel economy. It didn't happen by accident. That's the whole massive project of suburbanization, then destruction and later gentrification of inner cities. The state corporate program began with a conspiracy by General Motors, Firestone Rubber, Standard Oil of California, to buy up and destroy efficient electric transportation systems in Los Angeles and dozens of other cities. They were actually convicted of criminal conspiracy and given a tap on the wrist, I think a $5,000 fine. The federal government then took over. It relocated infrastructure and capital stock to suburban areas and also created a huge interstate highway system under the usual pretext of defense. Railroads were displaced by government-financed motor and air transport. The public played almost no role, apart from choosing within the narrowly structured framework of options that are designed by state corporate managers. They're supported by vast campaigns to fabricate consumers with created wants, borrowing Veblen's terms. One result is the atomization of the society and the entrapment of isolated individuals with huge debts. These efforts grew out of the recognition that I mentioned a century ago that democratic achievements have to be curtailed by shaping attitudes and beliefs. As the business press put it, directing people to superficial things of life, like fashionable consumption. All of that's necessary to ensure that the opulent minority are protected from ignorant and meddlesome outsiders, namely the population. If I just add a personal note on that, I came down here this afternoon by the Acela, the jewel and the crown of new high-speed railroad technology. The first time I came from Boston to New York was 60 years ago, and there was improvement since then. It was 5 minutes faster today than it was 60 years ago. While state corporate power was vigorously promoting the privatization of life and maximal waste of energy, it was also undermining the efficient choices that the market doesn't and can't provide. That's another highly destructive built-in market inefficiency. So to put it simply, if I want to get home from work in the evening, the market does allow me a choice between, say, a Ford and a Toyota, but it doesn't allow me a choice between a car and a subway, which would be much more inefficient. And maybe everybody wants it, but the market doesn't allow that choice. That's a social decision. And in a democratic society, it would be the decision of an organized public. But that's just what the elite attack on democracy seeks to undermine. Now, these consequences are right before our eyes in ways that are sometimes surreal. A couple of weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal had an article reporting that the U.S. transportation chief is in Spain. He's meeting with high-speed rail suppliers. Europe's engineering and rail companies are lining up for some potentially lucrative U.S. contracts for high-speed rail projects. At stake is $13 billion in stimulus funds that the Obama administration is allocating to upgrade existing rail lines and build new ones that would one day rival Europe's. So think what's happening. Spain and other European countries are hoping to get U.S. taxpayer funding for high-speed rail and related infrastructure. And at the very same time, Washington is busy dismantling leading sectors of U.S. industry, ruining the lives of workers and communities who could easily do it themselves. It's pretty hard to conjure up a more damning indictment of the economic system that's been constructed by state corporate managers. Surely the auto industry could be reconstructed to produce what the country needs using its highly skilled workforce. But that's not even on the agenda. It's not even being discussed. Rather, we'll go to Spain and we'll give them taxpayer money for them to do it while we destroy the capacity to do it here. It's been done before. So during World War II, it was kind of a semi-command economy, government-organized economy. That's what happened. The industry was reconstructed for the purpose of war dramatically. It not only ended the Depression, but it initiated the most spectacular period of growth in economic history. In 4 years, U.S. industrial production just about quadrupled, and that as the economy was retooled for war, and that laid the basis for the golden age that followed. Well, warnings about the purposeful destruction of U.S. productive capacity have been familiar for decades, maybe most prominently by the late Seymour Melman, who many of us knew well. Melman was also one of those who pointed the way to a sensible way to reverse the process. This state corporate leadership, of course, has other commitments, but there's no reason for passivity on the part of the public, the so-called stakeholders, workers and community. I mean, with enough popular support, they could just take over the plants and carry out the task of reconstruction themselves. It's not a very exotic proposal. One of the standard texts on corporations in the economics literature points out that nowhere is it written in stone that the short-term interests of corporate shareholders in the United States deserve a higher priority than all other corporate stakeholders, workers and community. That's a state corporate decision. It has nothing to do with economic theory.